So, what do all these Bitcoin addresses have in common? They all start with the prefix bc1. What makes these bc1 addresses so special? Hey everyone, I'm Alex from Bitcoin Briefly, and today we'll be discussing these types of addresses. bc1 addresses are commonly referred to as bech32, native segwit, and pay-to-witness public key hash addresses. These types of addresses were first available 4.5 years ago, and today represent about a third of Bitcoin transaction inputs on a daily basis. So why are they so popular? Well, there are a few reasons. When sending Bitcoin, these bech32 addresses pay less in mining fees compared to other address formats. In fact, fee savings can be around 40% compared to addresses that have the prefix 3, and up to 80% compared to addresses that start with a 1. How do these native SegWit addresses get such great fee savings? Well, transactions that are sent from these addresses are smaller in size. To explain exactly why they're smaller is practically speaking unnecessary and would introduce a lot of technical jargon. All you need to know is that because their transaction sizes are smaller, miners don't need to process as much data when confirming those transactions into the blockchain. And so because you're essentially easing the amount of work that miners need to do to process your transaction, sending Bitcoin from a bech32 address will save you money on transaction fees. What's important to note is that you only gain these fee savings when sending Bitcoin from bech32 addresses. For example, if you're sending Bitcoin from an address that starts with a bc1 to an address that starts with a 1, you'll save money on network fees. On the other hand, if you're sending Bitcoin from an address that starts with a 1 to an address that starts with a bc1, you won't save money on network fees. The second benefit is that they help the Bitcoin network scale. Because of their smaller transaction sizes, bech32 addresses help scale the amount of transactions that can be processed by the Bitcoin network. Remember, the amount of transactions that a miner can fit into a block is limited. So the smaller the transaction sizes are, the more transactions a miner can fit into a block and add to the blockchain. As you might already know, the Bitcoin network is often said to only be capable of 3 transactions per second. With native SegWit addresses, that number increases to 7. Of course, these numbers don't even take into account second layer scaling solutions enabled by bech32 addresses like the Lightning Network, which can theoretically process 25 million transactions per second. That's more than 1,000 times Visa's 24,000 transactions per second. Finally, the third benefit is that they're easier to read. Compare this address to this one. You'll find that the bc1 address only uses lowercase letters, whereas the 1 address uses both upper and lower cases. Even though the bc1 address is longer, it's easier to process because of its lowercase nature. This makes reading, speaking, and writing addresses easier, faster, and more accurate compared to mixed case addresses. There are 2 quick side notes that I'd like to make. The first is that there's an exception to the lowercase rule, and that's when bc1 addresses can be all uppercase when processed as QR codes. The second is that other cryptocurrencies use addresses that start with a 1 as well. This can lead to people sending Bitcoin to another network, leading to disastrous consequences like losing Bitcoin. bc1 addresses make it clear that you're using Bitcoin. Because bech32 addresses offer fee savings, scalability, and user friendliness, you're probably excited to start using them. Luckily, it's really easy to switch over to these types of addresses. All you need to do is send Bitcoin from your current non-bc1 address and send it to a bc1 address that you own. If you're using a Ledger or Trezor device, we actually have a guide for you that will walk you through the process step by step in the description below. But before you transition and send your Bitcoin to a bech32 address, here's what you need to know. There's a myth out there that some addresses can't send or receive Bitcoin from bech32 addresses, and that's simply not true. In fact, Bitcoin developers go out of their way to ensure backwards compatibility at a protocol level. In other words, all types of addresses can send Bitcoin to and receive Bitcoin from bech32 addresses, but ensuring compatibility is the responsibility of wallet companies and exchanges. Though most vendors support native SegWit addresses now, there's still a handful that haven't yet upgraded their software to recognize these bech32 addresses, so make sure that your vendor supports bech32 addresses before transitioning to them. There are links to check compatibility in the description below. Now before we wrap up the video, here's some extra pointers. The first is not to get native SegWit addresses confused with nested SegWit addresses. A nested SegWit address starts with a 3 and is formatted as a pay-to-witness public key hash in a pay-to-script hash. It's complicated jargon, but don't overthink it. Just know that BC1 addresses are not the same as addresses that start with a 3. Finally, if you were paying close attention to the intro, you might have noticed that these addresses also have the letter Q right after the BC1 prefix. That letter Q describes what's known as the witness version. Now, practically speaking, I don't think you need to know what a witness version is as a Bitcoin user. I just wanted to point this out so that you're not alarmed wondering why all of your BC1 addresses also have a Q in them. Don't worry, you're not the target of some grand conspiracy. So to summarize, the BC1 prefix address format is the most common for Bitcoin addresses today. They're commonly called bech32, native segwit, and pay-to-witness public key hash addresses. They offer a variety of benefits including fee savings, scalability, and user-friendliness. To switch, all you need to do is send Bitcoin to a bech32 address, but make sure that your wallet or exchange actually recognizes them. These native segwit addresses should not be confused with nested segwit addresses that start with a 3. And finally, don't be alarmed if your BC1 addresses have the letter Q in them right after the prefix. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this helpful. If you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I also want to hear what you guys want to learn more about, so let me know in the comments down below.